All right, we'll call the meeting to order then for the ad hoc committee on racket sports. We are broadcasting live on the Town of St. Mary's YouTube channel. I'll begin this morning by asking if there's anyone with any declarations of community interest. Okay, seeing none, I'll go to item number 3, the agenda. Any additions or problems with the agenda? Jenna, do you want to maybe speak to correspondence? Would you mind, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Good morning, committee. There was correspondence that came in to Ms. Ishii yesterday. She did send it over to me, and it is speaking to some suggestions that the author would like the committee to think about when making decisions about how to move forward, or make recommendations on how to move forward. I did receive confirmation from that author very early this morning that I could share it with you, so I do apologize that it was only sent to you this morning during working hours. It has been printed and provided. That individual, if I can just highlight so that we understand exactly what was included. The person is not representing either club. They are hoping that the decisions or the recommendations that can be made as a result of this committee will benefit both users of sports, and did make a point of possibly considering badminton users in the future. There were details in there recommending some colors, lines, layout, and that has been put forward as well as examples of what that may look like. So I leave that correspondence in your hands for consideration today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else with regards to the agenda? Okay, I'll take a motion that the February 19th, 2025 ad hoc racket sport committee agenda be accepted as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded. Mr. Van Galen, any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, item number 4 then is getting back to follow up with regards to a number of items. Everybody knows why we're here and sort of the history and so forth, but I'll turn it over to Ms. Ishii just to report back on some of the items discussed by the committee at our last meeting, please.
All right. Our team worked on getting some places for this committee meeting today. So if we walk through, I can just go through them briefly, and then if there's any specific questions, I did add an additional one on here for the standalone facility, just so we had an idea. These prices are quotes that we have received today, and also based on other facilities that have more recently built these structures as well. So the first option was the short-term option. To resurface the north half of the existing Water Street facility courts to create the 6 pickleball courts, which would be the 4 shared and 2 dedicated, and 1 shared tennis courts. So within this price, we included the cost of the net. The courts would have different line colors, as the committee spoke last time. This would include 2 permanent pickleball nets. Core drilling will be required for that to take place. Given the political climate, some of the supplies might be a little bit higher because some things do come from the US, so we have to keep in mind that's with all of the pricing here. The benefit of this option, by doing it, it would extend the life expectancy of that side of the court specifically, because we know that it is delaminating and it will have to all be done at some point. The work would take approximately, they're saying 3 to 4 days, weather dependent. But the contractors are pretty well booked up for the season right now, so we wouldn't know when we could do a lot of this work. It might have to be mid-season or at the end of the season. Price for that is $74,000 with HST excluded. The second option, to repaint the north half of the existing Water Street facility to create 6 pickleball courts and 2 shared tennis courts. So very similar to the one above. What it would include, which would be the different lines, the portable nets on wheels, all those types of things, the same time frame, the same timeline. The price is $65,000. However, the contractor has indicated the cost might be slightly higher. That's a rough estimate at this point. So that was the second option. The third short-term option was to paint an additional 4 pickleball courts on the south half of the existing Water Street facility to create the 4 pickleball courts and 2 shared courts. So this is the recommendation from the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan. That was the original recommendation. So we did pop it back in here as another alternative option. The price was $20,000, HST excluded. So it was $75,000 for the painting, and then the additional money was for the portable nets. So long-term options, we did explore the long-term options as we spoke about at the last committee meeting. And the one was to expand the existing Water Street facility to create the additional 4 dedicated pickleball courts. So this would include extending the perimeter, it would include lighting, fencing, and permanent pickleball nets. The trail would need to be relocated closer to the river. There would be staff, or we would need to remove some trees, and staff has contacted Upper Thames, but at this point we haven't heard back from them. So we are unaware of what their thought of this is. The price at this time is unknown at the time of the report. However, a rough estimate of 180,000. And that's just based on what has happened in other locations. So that would be a rough estimate. But if we were to, sorry, let me go through. I'm jumping ahead here. So in 2024, and I think some people know this because I think I've been shared a lot of these quotes from other individuals that play these sports. Township of Zora received a quote for 462,000 to create a new 120 by 150 facility. So we have that quote. That facility included 2 tennis and 3 pickleball courts, and the price included all site work, drainage, surfacing, netting, like all that stuff. So it breaks down to a cost of about $25.68 a square foot is what it roughly breaks down to. So pulling that forward into the standalone facility, which was not one of the recommendations, but we did include it within this option, which would include everything. Numbers of courts would need to be determined, but this is a rough estimate that would include 2 dedicated tennis courts and 3 dedicated pickleball courts, just to give us an idea. Price would be roughly 462 based on the price that we received from the township Zora. This cost is reflective of court construction only, so it doesn't include land because we are unsure where it would go at this time. However, that would be something that was recommended in the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan, that we do have to look for land for these courts, and we have to be aware of that as well. Further discussion points I would like the committee to talk about. So I did add some additional points that I wanted us to discuss at this committee meeting, so we can move forward with some of these. One of them was the appropriate number of benches required for each court. I know there has been some debate from both groups as to what is appropriate and what is not. So if we could talk about that openly and come up with some consensus, that would be of benefit. And the second question is, so recommendation 14 of the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan is to explore the option of renovating the PRC Community Center into an inside gymnasium. I know both sports speak to multiple lines on courts being very difficult to play. So I want to understand if either of these groups would be interested in something like that, or if that would not be something that would be of interest moving forward, and we would look at making that a different type of gymnasium. We need to understand if that works, because it would not be standalone individual gymnasium for one sport specifically. So those are my questions. Does anybody have any questions for me as I've kind of gone through this quickly?
Going to the $20,000 option for the just painting of the lines. I take it that's just the painting on the existing surfaces. No,
On this, that's correct.
So,
that was the original recommendation
right,
that came out of the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan.
So but that would imply then that the 3 to 5 year time frame period that you talked about in the other options is the whole court, all courts would have to be resurfaced in 3 to 5 years.
Correct.
So is it fair to say that in the 3 to 5 year time frame is there needs to be another investment of, and I'm just extrapolating about $40,000 to $50,000 for the 2 courts, or
Probably a little bit more.
probably a little?
So yes, but yes, you are absolutely
Okay,
correct.
so I just want to put that in there.
75, maybe something like that.
Right.
I would be able to give a more accurate account of what that would be.
I think that's pretty much bang on based on what that, it would be 75,000 to do all 4 courts.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
So you're right, within the 3 to 5, if we just did the 20,000, we would have to redo that anyway.
Right. And if you went for one of the other options, like the 74 or the $60,000 option, that is just the resurfacing of the north court. The south court would be have to be resurfaced in a period of time as well.
Which would be 3 to 5 years, so then we would be, you need to redo that side of the court, correct?
Okay. then just one more follow-up. Did any of this pricing or consider that the longer term investment of, it's offsetting some of this stuff from a longer term or shorter term? So like if you say this extends the life of this facility for 10 years, does that mean that and a longer term, based on the recommendations of being dedicated facilities for both sports, to look at that, does that conclude that that gets moved out at least 10 years?
Not necessarily, so that's why we still want to look at all options here. I mean, there have been a lot of discussions about whether we move the courts at some point anyways, just because, I mean, parking, as everybody knows, is quite crazy down there in the summer months. So I think we need to explore everything. If that was the determined option, we would decide on, you know, it could be a 5-10 year option, but we would still be exploring the possibility of building a standalone facility. Like that is still within the plan, so that's something we still will be exploring. It is not pulled off the table because we are resurfacing the courts.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mangill?
Yes, thank you. Stephanie, the time that it would take for painting, is that the same as the previous option? It would be 3 or 4 days and probably happen later in the season?
Yeah, probably would happen later in the season. The contractor's pretty booked up already because they book pre-season for a lot of these jobs.
Okay. And the, how long do we expect the UTRCA to take before they reply?
So through the chair, I reached out to them, a couple of days after the meeting. And, I know a couple of their managers were away, so I was talking to junior staff. I was hopeful to have something by today, but I still haven't heard anything yet.
Okay. And the height of the community hall, do you know what it is?
Yeah, 14 feet.
So my lob shots are gone. I mean, that's a pretty obvious, really, I mean, we thought about this, especially during COVID and all kinds of other scenarios. And the only facility that works for tennis is unfortunately the arena, which is always busy during the winter. So pursuing an indoor facility with what exists in the town is probably not going to be very helpful for tennis unless we learn to play a different style of game. But you can't always keep the ball under 14 feet. It's just too dynamic a sport to prevent that from happening. That'd be my comment on that.
Mr. Rath?
Yes, just want to confirm costing. I'm sure these are ballpark. I don't know if you've had 3 quotes or 5 quotes, but these are ballpark prices.
So these were quotes from actual contractors.
So you got 3?
We had the one quote from the individual at this point. So it would go out to RFP. We would do the proper procurement process as we would with any town project, but as we do, but this is the current quote. And the quotes that we received are from the individuals that are actually doing the work around the area and have done work for us in the past. So it's not an unknown individual at this point.
Further questions or comments? Okay, well, so we're trying to look for just thoughts on what's proposed and look for, you know, the 2 items, the long-term and the short-term. You know, Mr. Van Allen, respectfully, I think your feedback on tennis indoors is that's the type of thing that I think is helpful in making decisions. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for, so that's helpful to see going forward. I will say that I did talk to Councillor Craig now a bit about with the UPRC, and he did talk to someone that sat on the appeals committee before, and the issue of the hard surface path, where the path is an issue, moving it closer to the river. But that's not a deal breaker, but I'm just saying that that's the type of thing they're not big fans of.
Let alone the court.
No, we haven't got there yet. He didn't have an opinion on that, but just that the court would impede on the path, obviously, right? And he said that they've had situations where, I mean, when we did the flats project, just so everyone understands, we had to have special asphalt and, you know, have engineered drawings about how it holds the water and so forth, that they are really hesitant to put people closer to water in any aspect. And I think you were on council when we did the Westward School project, remember, and when they had to move the entrance, remember that because of the flood lines? So it may or may not be a deal breaker. I just want to make you aware of that, the path is an issue. And he, you know, he talked to someone who'd been on the fields committee and so forth, and he got back and he said that right away and said that might be an issue, just so everyone's aware. That would be a challenge.
I haven't thought on that, but I'll hold it.
Well, no, I mean, that's what we're here for. The reality is that, you know,
Okay,
yeah.
then align them differently. Instead of having 4 courts on, next to the north courts, which would be approximately 60 feet. Align the courts north and south, end to end along the whole course. And you only need 30 feet, and that will stay within the current path.
Okay.
Do you want to show that?
And those are the type of things we want to talk about because I just, he just said that moving that path is going to be an issue.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I want to bring that out that if we are, one of the things on the table is expansion, this is the type of thinking that we need to talk about because it's possible they may say you can't move the path, but you can expand the courts, right?
And that's would work with the alignment I just described.
Okay. We don't have a drawing of that, though, do we?
No, you don't. It's just, it was one of the things that I wrote out prior to the meeting and from last time and said, well, actually, you know, it just would work so much better to have them all on one end. For players moving back and forth between the courts. Having the path moved didn't seem to be a big deal to me, but I'm not on the.
You know, I don't know, but experience tells me it will probably be an issue.
Yeah.
Mr. Ferguson, yeah.
So just to be clear, like whatever configuration is, we're still talking about 4 dedicated pickleball courts beside the existing 2 tennis courts.
Yes.
The 2 tennis courts will continue to be shared tennis courts with 4 pickleball courts, so that we 8 pickleball courts, 4 tennis courts, and 2 dedicated tennis courts and 2 dedicated coaching.
I mean, obviously everything is negotiable. Or flexible, but the existing arrangement doesn't change.
Okay.
Just add the 4 pickleball courts or 2 boards, what you'd be looking for. At least
There has to be one there.
Sorry. So, yeah, add 4 alongside both the north and the south courts, and leave the current arrangement as is.
Yeah.
So the premise of this, this idea is don't do anything but this. So we basically say, if this is a feasible thing, is we're not gonna do anything until we get this complete. Is that
This is only-
the premise?
The premise is only about a permanent solution. It's not about the short-term solutions that I'm sure we'll be talking about.
It's one here and one here.
So,
Before.
1 second, just. John, can you just clarify for the whole committee, everyone? Do you mind, please? Not. Okay. Yeah.
It's not gonna show up on. Okay.
Do you mind, Don? Just, I think this is important, just so everyone understands, because I certainly don't 100% understand either. I think Mike understands, but I don't think I understand.
Yes. No, the pen isn't showing up. We need a marker.
Do we have a marker?
No. Can show that on if you want to.
There's something, okay.
Start with this. It doesn't show. Current quarters.
Hey, Don, Don's just got a pen.
Got something? A little wider anyway. court, tennis courts. And of course, the current pickleball courts. Okay. Chad is here. Path runs a little bit narrower down to this end than it does at this end, but it's about 50 feet at this end, maybe 40-ish at this end. You need 34 feet wide for a pickleball court.
Seven on each side.
Yes. Yeah. So obviously then the pickleball court can fit inside of the path. Okay. Obviously, I don't have measurements for length here, but they might go longer.
So that's 7 foot of clearance on either side.
Well, like I say, you need 34 feet for the court.
That allows for a 7 foot clearance on either side to play the sport, then it's, you gotta consider benches and stuff like that too. It'd have to be wider.
34 plus 14, 48. Is that what you're looking for? So I know at this end, that works. At this end, it tapers. Someone's gonna have to do the measurement and figure out how much is available there.
We don't have a measurement on that space from, no, okay.
No.
I asked,
And all I took was from GPS lines.
oh, did you? Okay, because I didn't think they were that wide. Good for you, because I didn't look, but I didn't think they were that wide, but.
You can move the shed.
Yeah, it's the electrical system.
Okay. Then maybe,
There's already existing area for bench within the space that's already there, so.
Yeah.
You can
And-
still
and-
use the-
and if you get down to this end and you don't have areas for benches, you still have them here, but, you know, someone's gonna have to do the mapping and.
Doug or Joanna, is that something that has been looked at, that space, or?
Well, there's trees there.
Oh.
Definitely trees, yeah. Although one of them is quite dead.
That doesn't seem to matter sometimes.
Believe me, I remember.
But so it is something we could look at, Doug or Joanna? Yeah, okay. Councilor Unit?
But am I correct in thinking that just because we're not moving the path, we've appeased UTRCA, but they're not gonna go for hard surfaces any closer to the river, are they, any more than they were a dock in the river?
Yeah, so.
It's still gonna be an issue.
That's the question I've asked the upper tanks, is that when we did the mill tunnel project, what the enforced on us was a quota system saying that if you, this is use round numbers, if you had 100 square meters of hard surface area in Mill Tunnel Park, you wanted to create new hard surface area, you had to remove some to get some. So that's what I'm asking, that if the quota system still exists, if that's the case, then it may come to be that they say, you can do whatever expansion you have here, but whatever you add, you have to take away somewhere else in hard surface, which means paid parking spots.
So it's not a given.
It's not a given, yeah, unfortunately, we're operating in a bit of a vacuum right now as I wait for.
I just wanna make that clear
Yeah,
that.
we don't know anything for sure, but I was led to believe that moving the path closer to the river would be a hard no, but again, anything's possible, right? So that's why, I think this is helpful, Donna, but I don't know whether we could do this. Councilor Pearl?
Yes, from the discussions from last time, it was kind of, what I kept hearing was 6 pickleball courts for pickleball, and that was the goal, was kind of having 6. And, but you're proposing here is 8, which is kind of more than the request or need. And so what I was thinking was, in the existing space that we've got, if the extension wasn't possible, just putting 6 pickleball courts and leaving one dedicated to tennis alone, being that one or whichever one, and then putting pickleball here and pickleball here. So you get your 6 shared courts, and you have 4 tennis courts with 3 of them are shared, and one of them would be a standalone.
That's one of the options, isn't it?
I don't believe it is.
No, it was always covering all of the tennis courts with pickleball lines. And so
That
this,
was the original option, yeah.
yeah, that was the original option, so that would be a less painting obligation. It would be improving one court for pickleball, giving 6 courts and leaving one that's dedicated for tennis, and it'd be a very short-term solution. Because the exploration of adding courts is still, an important thing.
So your suggestion, Fern, is that the 6 pickleball courts are all shared use courts though, right?
For a temporary solution, because there's no opportunity right at this moment without a lot of investigation. And maybe by the end of summer, we'll know that we can do that expansion.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we can't paint lines until the end of the summer or sometime through the summer anyway. So I'm just suggesting that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shared pickleball, which is what is there now, is 4 shared. And then 1 dedicated for tennis. So you're not, for all the learners and the new people, they have somewhere to go that's just strictly tennis. And adding the lines to the extra, or not extra, but to your dedicated tennis court to allow for pickleball, and then pursue expansion or other location or other
Just one second,
opportunities.
Mr. Batch's first.
I hear you. I'm not sure I like that option because the task club would like to keep the 2 dedicated at minimum. What Dawn was talking about is a longer term solution. And I'm sure that the pickleball, their goal is to get dedicated space. So this is more of a medium to long term, getting dedicated space. And which is what they need. We need our dedicated space too. And you're not going to put lines on courts and then remove them. That's just an added cost. So I hear your point, but that kind of goes against keeping dedicated court space, not just for the St. Mary's Tennis Club, but the public at large. And there's a lot of people that use them. More than just membership.
Mr. Burton?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That basically is the recommendation 33 scaled back to instead of 8 to 6.
Yeah.
Which I understand. We said 6. The conversation we had last time is both parties, their objective is to have some dedicated space. That's ideal for the sport. So from the difference between your suggestion, Fern, versus the 6 courts with 2 dedicated is probably a little more costly, but I wouldn't think it that much more costly. So then what the tennis is saying is as Roger says, is they keep 2 dedicated courts. We get a dedicated court, we get 6 is if you suggest, well, is live with 8 or live with 6 is from a pickleball point of view is it makes more sense for us is just go all 8. Because 8 does have value to us. It has value from a tournament point of view. It has value for a lot of reasons, but we also respect the fact that we both are arguing that dedicated is as a passion for both. Is we just know that we're not going to get all dedicated.
Yeah, so if I may, so the opportunity to paint those lines now is pretty much a negative on both of your sides. And the only solution would be some expansion, which may or may not ever happen in that location.
For short term?
Pardon?
No, from a short term point of view is keeping the existing footprint with 6 courts on one side is 2 dedicated and 2 tennis courts on the other side. That is a short term, compromise that doesn't require a huge investment until you get to the point where we can talk about a longer term solution, which could be that. That doesn't take that off the table, by the way.
But realistically, it could be years.
Could be years.
It took us 2 years to get the doc, not being facetious, Don, but it took us 2 years to get the document together.
Fundraising doesn't happen overnight either.
Yeah.
I understand.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to understand 6 courts on the north, pickleball. but 2 tennis courts on the north as well.
One tennis court.
One tennis court. Okay. So from my perspective, I think any short-term solution should not create issues for long-term solutions. So removing tennis courts today, when we know that we have used 4 courts in the past and will continue to want 4 courts and need 4 courts, that to temporarily take, I don't think it's a temporary solution to remove the tennis court. I think it's a permanent solution. And if they remain multi-purpose on the north end, it doesn't diminish your capacity. You still have 6 courts. It doesn't give you that dedicated court, but I think the dedicated court comes with the permanent solution. And I keep saying, we want you to have that, and we'll help you to get there. We'll fundraise together and work together with the community, but, I'll tell you, the discussions I've had with members, some people are really sensitive to the idea of losing the court permanently. And then there are the other members that say, oh, those lines, they just make it so difficult to play. So they're really torn on this, and I cannot suggest that either option is acceptable to the majority of my members right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Lee?
I think if there's one thing we agree on in tennis and pickleball is that we both need dedicated courts. You know, but the reality is that sharing is something that we're going to have to do and want to do. I think in order for the town to be able to, I'm looking at the general pickleball community at large. They don't have dedicated courts right now. They don't have any courts. They use the nets that are there for tennis, and that just isn't a satisfactory pickleball experience at all. So I do think we would need to push for 2 dedicated courts, you know. And quite frankly, I was hoping that the consultant would come out with, you know, north half pickleball, south half tennis. But you know, regrettably, that would remove 2 courts from tennis, and that's regrettable.
Mr. Bastian, and stuff back here.
Except, I hear your side, except that that's outside, as St. Mary's already has the facilities at the senior center. They are dedicated lines when they're put down. It's a public facility, so the lines go up, the lines go down. But there's a lot of people that use the indoor courts year round, and I'm one of them. So the town already has 3 courts to use year round.
Respectfully, not for people to pick up and go and play. If I wanted to, and
No,
I go through this all the time. This is the argument that I'm struggling with, is why I was so supportive. Let's just paint all the lines, because we go through this all the time with hockey. And, you know, little Johnny, whose mother's a taxpayer and wants little Johnny to learn how to skate. And we offer times that hockey would like to use, right? We go through this all the time. So the reality is part of the problem, and what I'm struggling with as a counselor, is that there's a spot that someone can go and pick up and play tennis anytime they want. And that was the part of the grant as well, that the tennis club, you know, did the work to get, but that was in the grant. We got a train grant, but you had to have other facilities. We don't have that for pickleball, respectfully, because the space has to be booked, tape has to be put down, blah, 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 blah. So I respectfully disagree. We don't have dedicated pickleball spots by any stretch of the imagination. Stephanie?
I just wanted to add, because there were comments about the number of courts. So within the Rec and Culture and Leisure Master Plan, they talked about 4 additional courts painted on the south side in the short term. So that was what the consultants designed. Within the long term was 6 dedicated pickleball courts. So it does stipulate that, because I know Fern mentioned that a little bit. So that's where the numbers 4 and 6 are getting mixed up a little bit, because the consultant had recommended the 4 courts immediately and then the 6 permanent courts long term. That's what I just wanted to bring that back, because I knew there was, when you had asked some questions there.
Yeah. So it was 6 dedicated and then 4 dedicated tennis, or was it 4 shared? So
It was 4
tennis,
shared.
so was there ever a consideration for dedicated?
There was not within the plan, no. Based on, and I'm just strictly saying what came out of the plan.
Right.
The only suggestion was that we obtain land and build somewhere that, you know, did this.
But it said, it spoke to the 6 dedicated pickleball facilities.
And going back to John's suggestion, which I quite like, there's a lot of trees there. Okay? Mr. Ferguson.
So, to Don's suggestion, and I acknowledge what you're saying, that you put in some permanent posts in there, and then that becomes difficult to change. It's an added cost. I just say it's an added cost. So your long-term solution is, if you went that way, is just remove the post, repaint the surface. The surface has got to be redone in 3 to 5 years anyway. So I don't see that as a big cost. I do appreciate the fact that it's a loss of a court. But it goes back to this dedicated facility. Is then looking at your long-term idea is, would there be enough space to put tennis courts there? No.
On the west end?
Yeah, so if you put that, you got your dedicated, you have your dedicated tennis courts here.
Yeah.
Put another dedicated tennis court there. You put a shared thing there, and 6 pickup balls in your investment is not something.
All within the UTRCA permission, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm hearing the path, movement is an issue today more than I expected. I certainly knew the hard surface would be an issue. Interesting you should bring that up, because it is possible to build a tennis court without putting down a hard surface. You can use a clay surface, or you can use grass. Now, grass is your most expensive option and higher in maintenance, but they use clay courts in Stratford. And is everyone familiar with what a clay court surface means?
I've seen it, but I don't know what it means.
Okay,
And I don't know.
it's more, it's a porous surface, it's more like a fine ash gravel.
And they pack it.
It's packed and lined.
Okay.
But it's got a lot of sponginess to it. So a lot of seniors like playing on it because it's less impact. And it changes the game a little bit because you don't get as much bounce. But it's surprising. I've played in Stratford a couple of times during COVID when facility availability was minimal and they opened up earlier. And I quite enjoyed it. And I do hear from my members that they wouldn't mind trying it. But it still becomes the issue of, is there enough space between the path today? No, 50 feet isn't enough for a tennis court. It has to be, well, if they're side by side, you can get away with 55, but if it's standalone, it has to be 60 feet wide. So the whole path has to move, and that's a UTRTA permission as much as it is for the hard court surface.
I guess I was just going to, your point is if we did this short-term solution and making this dedicated pickleball thing, is that then it's hard to return that back to a tennis court and say, well, is this solution, if you're gonna have to get permission anyway, is then you've got your solution, is you don't have to change that one back, you just put, repaint the line, so you have your 6 dedicated in this footprint here, dedicated tennis, 1 more shared. And then it becomes a pretty good option if you can get it approved. But then you have actually time to wait. And then, and I guess going back to the compromise, is there's a compromise is lose a court for the benefit of pickleballers to have a dedicated court. And I know that's tough. I just want to be clear that that's what I view as the compromise. But your idea here, if it was approved, is probably something that is pretty cost effective in the future if you could get the approvals.
That's the big question. I'll be honest, I'm not very optimistic, but there seems to be a lot of inconsistency in the past. There's things that, I've made the mistake of saying, oh, that'll never happen, and they've happened, it's come back to bite me. So I don't know, it's just, there seems to be no consistency, but the plans, I will just say our most recent experience, the plans of things that we wanted to do at Mill Donald Field were nearly all scrapped in terms of any construction. And we went back to fixing existing buildings where we changed the envelope, and, made a compromise with the lawn bowling club, and they got reduced space so that they could have better washrooms. And we were allowed to do paving after some engineering and 2 years of approvals.
I appreciate it. Like, I helped to manage the sailing club at Wildwood, which of course is totally within the UTRCA jurisdiction. And we've had some success building structures there. but the last one, right at the last minute, got taken off the board because it was, considered to be too close to the floodplain, and we weren't building very much, we were just putting in a lift for mass, but, they took it off the board, but prior to that, you know, adding a shed, great, you know, great for storage, adding the dock system 20 years ago, that was a massive project, and, they were all for it. And you guys, I mean, I can't believe the nightmare you went through. But in my mind, I kind of wonder if it's not just simply floodplain or not. I think they also tend to look at the individual property and say, how sensitive is it? And when you look at Donald Field, we all know that floods routinely. And it's above the dam, which makes it more likely for flooding. And I think it's probably a more sensitive area than what we're talking about here. So maybe there is some room to make an argument or some acknowledgement of that. But you're right, we have to wait for the UTRCA.
I hope you're right, but irrespective, we had to go through, like, council would need to make the decision to spend a significant amount of money on engineering. If this was, the committee that recommended this and council decided to adopt it without the guarantee that it will happen, like, respectfully, we put in the same bloody dock they had with Wildwood, you know, and it took 2 years and 6 figures in engineering, seriously. You know, that's our experience. And maybe,
Fortunately, we got there a lot less time and a lot less money.
yeah, and you could be right. You could be right that they may look at this property differently, but at this point, we just don't know. So, yeah, Mr. Ferguson.
I guess just, Mike, just to move it forward, it looks like this is something that is feasible, subject to approval. Is if it's not approved, then we're definitely into a bigger long-term thing.
Somewhere else.
Somewhere. So in order to get facilities, more pickleball facilities, and I'm basically saying is, why wouldn't we move ahead with the six or two dedicated pickleball courts at your sacrifice, admittedly, but it's not a sunk investment. Is if this works, not a sunk investment. If it doesn't work, we got to go somewhere else. Is the question I would have is if you were told tomorrow that there's no way you could do this, is we're into a very long-term solution, right? So then it comes back to, so what are we going to do today? So why can't we move an idea forward today with the understanding that this is a good idea that may get some traction? If it does, and that could be probably shorter than 2 years, maybe, but if not, is we're moving ahead with a short-term solution and working together for a long-term solution.
The loss of the court is a severe blow to some of my members. I can't, you know, in all good conscience say it's a good idea. So for me, it comes back to leaving them as multi-purpose until a permanent solution is arrived at.
Does that mean you would endorse council's decision of painting all the lines? Because that's was a consultant recommendation.
Multi-purpose.
That's multi-purpose in my mind.
Yeah, I understand. Quite frankly, I thought you would make that point.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I'm trying.
What I was saying.
The goal of this committee is to have short-term and long-term solutions.
What I was
So
saying.
the part of the reason we're here is I keep hearing, you know, we can't live with the lines, but on the other hand, we can't give anything up. So I don't know where this is going, respectfully.
And my members are of two minds on the imposition of lines and on the loss of the court. In my mind, the loss of the court is more difficult to accept and more difficult to rectify in the future. But what I was suggesting is that the 6 shared courts, 2 tennis, 6 pickleball, is also a solution. I think it's readily acceptable to us, but I acknowledge no dedicated court for you in the interim. So it's as close as I can get and be enthusiastic, but all the other 2 solutions.
So just so I'm clear, forgive me. For the discussion lines of it. So that would mean 3 lined courts and 1 dedicated court for tennis, is that what you're suggesting?
No. Two shared tennis courts, 6 shared pickleball.
That's what we have now, isn't it?
On it, no, we
I
have
think-
4.
I think he's talking about redoing the lines to fit,
Well, go ahead.
6 courts here.
But I thought there wasn't enough space to turn the other way.
Option 2 in the report.
Option 2 in the report, okay. Okay, that's why I'm confused, I apologize. No, there's been too many discussions about line.
Believe me, this is almost as confusing as watching a tennis game sometimes. I think confusing ideas do fly
So
back and
then
forth.
you're suggesting we do option 2. Is that correct?
Let me just read it to
Well,
make
that's where I
sure
was
that I
confused, because I didn't think that's
remember
what that was.
how they were
Confused.
worded.
Yeah, that is option 2.
Yes. In all fairness, you're with it, or if you prefer chairman for the purpose of the committee, the letter. John was kind enough to advance this to me yesterday, and I had a long conversation with him after, and I think everyone knows he and I are pretty good friends, but we never really got to discuss it before he created the letter. Obviously, when you read it, you'll see, oh, he's going over some old ground for most of the members of the committee. I do appreciate that he's come up with the different color system as being an acceptable solution to many other places. And really when it comes, and I'm sure that there's gonna be lines painted. When it comes to painting lines, having a different color does help. It's not ideal, as I keep saying, but it does help. But he also had this solution of these removable, portable type lines. I've never heard of that before. Is that something that anyone has ever investigated other than the very poor option of masking tape? No.
Mr. Ferguson, can you speak to that?
Oh, sorry.
We have them already, they're never used, to set them up, is not problematic, but it takes time, they're locked away right now, so it's the same issue as the nets, they get knocked around in the play.
Sure.
Is unless you were to put something right into the surface that kind of
Yeah.
locks them into place, you know, it's really, asking pickleball to play with corner brackets, not lines.
Yes.
So, and then if you say it's like the Friendship Center, whatever it is, you could take it up every night, but we're trying to have a facility that people can just go and play the sport.
Those of us who know John.
Just 1 second, please. Joanna, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention it's different from those sort of loose lines that are almost like tie straps or that other kind of material that we have.
No, these are heavy duty plastic things that go in the corner, like the picture that John showed.
Right, yes,
Yeah,
because there are other courts that also
That's
have
option 2.
like an interlocking plastic tile, you know, the material.
Sport court.
Yeah, it's called sport court. The issue with that is so it rests on top of an existing surface. So there's a new facility in Lucan, in a community park there, that has sport courts that are dedicated pickleball, but it was a new build part of the subdivision development. And the issue with it would be maintenance, that they will crack and wear over time, where you would store it in the winter months, because we would need a facility for that. And it wouldn't have dual lines. So it is an option, and in the interim, it's not a permanent solution, but it is something that has been done elsewhere.
And it's also extremely slippery in like right after it's rained. That's the biggest thing.
Mr. Ferguson, yes, sir.
I've actually played on those courts, they have them in Cambridge, they're nice, but it requires somebody to set them up every time. They're expensive and they're not the greatest to play on. It's a little bit like playing on a Lego surface.
Yeah.
It is, your ball will hit the crack or whatever, but it's great for a gymnasium or a tournament setup where you can set something up and you got a beautiful pickleball arena, but it is from an expense point of view. And it's by no means a real portable thing unless you have staff that will set that up every time.
Sorry, Don, I didn't mean to cut you off, I just want to make sure we get a chance to.
In deference to my friend John.
Yeah.
It's great ideas, man. Sometimes the practicalities.
Well, and my read of it too, and again, I just read it this morning quickly, but it doesn't solve the color problem. I mean, like, well, there's different colors, it doesn't solve the line problem. In fact, it made it worse. Because that is one of the biggest concerns, right?
It makes it worse in what respect?
For a tennis player, in terms of the colors and the lines.
If we are playing on one set of colors and pickleball is playing on another set of colors, it does make it a little bit easier for us to distinguish which line we're playing.
Okay, that's not the feedback I heard originally, that the lines were ultimate and couldn't be sacrificed in the discussion before, Mr. Ferguson. That, well, you said all the lines and colors and so forth, we needed, that's why the discussion, because council's solution was to make all the courts shared of the report, and they said, can't have that, so all Mr. Stevens is doing is tweaking the lines with different colors, in my mind, unless I'm reading it wrong. So the different colors, you still got the line problem, right? It's gonna look like a pickleball court, you gotta play on tennis.
Still not the line.
I understand, and the first meeting we had, the lines were sacred, sorry, Mr. Ferguson.
Yeah, and I guess, from a lines point of view, it's difficult. There are color schemes that help, like, I downloaded a color scheme that seems to be, in a lot of places now, blue with yellow, for pickleball, white for tennis. It stands out pretty good. But the one thing that I do want to mention with the 3 shared courts and the 2 tennis courts is you've really complicated your line problem. Because the nice thing about this type of arrangement is it's a pickleball court within a tennis court. So you know the external parameters of your tennis court is you put 3 pickleball courts in there. Now you've got lines, overlapping lines. If the argument is confusion, it is a lot more confusing playing on that surface. So now you have 2 tennis courts that people will absolutely despise playing on because you got way too many lines.
To your point, your solution with the one dedicated pickleball court creates that problem in the remaining court.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. Council was, I think the majority of council was, I was just talking about the committee, and then they decided we needed some more discussion, but, the majority of council had moved forward that we paint all the courts, and that's why we're here, because I heard clearly that wasn't acceptable, so. Ms. Ferguson?
That's just one more thing, and I hear your passion about the tennis and your membership, because they're passionate, they want dedicated, they're passionate, they don't want the lines. Is in fairness to our 140 members of our committee, is they have the same passion. What I heard from my members is, Mike, you got to lobby for 6 dedicated courts. And my answer to that is we're here to find a solution that will work with both parties ideally. But the passion for the dedicated court is there as much as the passion is for tennis is to keep your status quo, because that's what is you're proposing is keep the status quo, wait for the long-term solution, is pickleball, stick another couple courts in.
Mr. Batchman?
Is it possible we have a 5-minute break?
Sure. Yeah, is everyone okay with that? We can take 5 minutes. Sure, absolutely. You want to talk about some stuff? Go ahead. We'll take 5-minute recess. Yeah, we're watching break, but you know where it is?
Yeah.
That's on my.
So consensus on long-term and short-term solutions. I'm not getting any consensus on much at the moment. I open the floor. Van Galen.
Biggest question we had when we talked was, given the two options that were the one option in the report,
Yes.
33, and the other option, option 2 in this report, neither of which give you a dedicated court. Are either of those acceptable to pickleball?
I guess, what we would say is, it's more acceptable to have 8 courts than it is to have just 6 squeezed together, because with the 6 is you've got multiple lines. The layout of a pickleball court on a tennis court is much easier, so that you just replicate the north and the south, you get a pickleball, it's a shared facility, get used to it kind of thing. That's better than 6. Obviously, you get more play area, and the fact that it's even less confusing on the lines.
So I'll be clear here, even the two of us can't agree, which is the most difficult for my group to accept.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, believe me, it's because, but I want to move forward, I want to move forward, so give me a chance. The real solution is the permanent solution, which is why I asked the council to create this ad hoc committee. The short-term solution to me is, it should really be as short as possible.
I definitely respectfully disagree. We spent a lot of money on a report. Council made a decision. There was a member of the public, yourself, that disagree with it. Council's prepared to move ahead because we've been kicking this down the road for 10 years, and quite frankly, I'm sick of it. So we're looking for a recommendation for a short-term solution, a long-term solution. If there is no consensus at this committee, I'm going to go back to council and ask them to implement the recommendation 33.
I understand that, your worship. Let me continue.
Okay.
If we can get some agreement that this ad hoc committee doesn't stop its work simply because the short-term solution has been created, and that we get some input from the UTRCA, what is possible at the site, and we get some effort towards fundraising jointly, which I have said before, I think that's going to be very welcome in the community to hear that we're working together on a permanent solution. As I said, we don't agree on which solution we would find acceptable, but I think we have to move forward with something that is temporary and not, you know, I don't want to say temporary in the terms of we're going to look at it in the next master plan 5 to 8 years from now, but that we're going to continue to pursue it with this council and if necessary the next, to build permanent courts either here or elsewhere in the community, and whether that means new tennis courts or new pickleball courts at some other location, you know, those options still exist too. But I want to move ahead on one of those solutions, and I don't want to get into too much of a discussion about whether they should be red and white and how the alignment goes. Lines aren't going to, there's going to be members of my club who say, well, those lines, you know, I'm done. They'll go
But
elsewhere.
to be clear, you're not making a proposal this time.
I'm not making a proposal. I want to see if council and the pickleball club will continue to pursue a permanent solution.
Council's already said that. It's in the report. We've endorsed the report. So the question is again, I'll go back to respectfully why we're here. We need a short-term solution and a long-term solution. Council's prepared to move forward. There was concerns from the tennis club about the decision council was about to make. That's why we're here. So we're looking for short-term and long-term. We're not kicking this down the road. So I'm asking you for a suggestion. So if you don't have one, I'll go to pickleball.
No, I asked pickleball if they are.
No, we had respectfully, we had a break so you can confirm. Mr. Lees.
We're pretty strong with our members that we want dedicated courts. For dedicated courts for pickleball, for dedicated courts for tennis. tennis can play on pickleball nights. Pickleball should be able to play on tennis nights. Dedicated courts is something that the town could advertise as to the general public in terms of, you know, the pickleball community. It is there for their use and always there for their use. I think it's important for the town to have dedicated courts for pickleball, just as it is for dedicated courts for tennis.
So I'll go back to, do we have a suggestion for a short-term solution?
I will make one.
Okay.
And I want to be deferential to my friend here. We don't agree. And he maybe vote it down. But as you have said, council is committed to a permanent solution. If pickleball is committed to a permanent solution, then we should move ahead with option 33.
Clarification of option 33 is to use colors which are favorable to both sides. I play pickleball and tennis, but as a tennis player, this is livable. The current lines there now, just the colors are wrong, but I can live with this. So Dawn's option is going back to option 33 from the master plan. It means we get to keep 4 courts. Now, I've heard, I'm listening. So Dawn is recommending the 33 with just favorable colors.
Stephanie, can you talk about the colors and what that means? And I understand the difference between what we're doing now and what Mr. Bass is proposing. We've been through the color thing back and forth.
We have been through the color thing back and forth with the committee and with the previous committees when we met to discuss. So we would sit down with the group to determine what color works as a whole group to make sure that the lines work, because I know some colors aren't necessarily favorable. On the courts, like red is not a favorable color where yellow might be. So we would decide that as a group completely to determine. And I think that's why I suspect is why this is yellow. So I suspect that, but that's.
So again, we're siding with 33.
So you're
We're
proposing.
may have your own opinion.
Mr. Lees.
Yeah, I'd speak against Article 33 and ask for proposal number 1. I think any short-term solution isn't a year or 2 years, it's 10 years, let's be honest here.
It's legal.
Yeah, at least 5. And I think dedicated pickleball courts is something that the town requires, that our members certainly want and expect.
Which was
It's regrettable.
Please let him finish, please, respectfully.
It's regrettable that it would lose 1 tennis court. We see tennis is going to use the shared court only in overflow situations. And it's, you know, I don't know how often you would use the 4 courts or not. I think it's tenable that you can lose 1 court. That's, I guess, what I think.
Mr. Bass.
Don, can you talk to the fact about the use of the 4 courts?
My recollection is that it's a good weather day. 4 courts are almost always used.
Tournaments?
Tournaments, obviously, we need 4 to expedite play of, you know, up to 40, 50 people. And lessons are, you know, we had 30 registrants for youth last year. That was a growth from the previous year, and I expect it will grow again. I have already had inquiries this year with 3 feet of snow in the court. So I think maintaining 4 courts for us is important, albeit they will not be ideal. And, you know, we'll sit down and work on colors and alignment to make it as less impactful as we can. But I want this committee to continue to work on permanent solutions once we get answers from UTRCA and our possibilities. Explore fundraising and all the other issues that take years. But that's also one of the reasons why going down to 3 courts is less acceptable. You know, years of that solution with 3 courts means it makes it difficult to implement a lot of the growth opportunities that we see with respect to lessons and all kinds of problems.
Ms. Burton?
To your point, Don, and this, like, we're absolutely committed to a long-term solution. As we've talked about a few things, but we know that this whole ad hoc committee was designed to say what we do in the short term, what we do in the long term. We know there's fundraising associated. So we're not in it to end it today kind of thing, is we know that that's gonna happen. Is we also know that, but we don't want to leave a short-term solution off the table. It is, everybody knows what our perspective is, but if I understand that the process, how this committee would work, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is we finish our dialogue and we vote for, what the best solution is by this committee, then it goes to council. Is that correct?
100%.
Okay, and we're willing to live with the result of that vote.
I think we've discussed it. So I'll make it a motion that this committee recommends that council proceed with option 33 from the master plan after consulting with this group on color schemes and alignment on the courts.
What about long-term? Can you include that in the motion?
Oh, yes, let's, and that this committee continue to pursue opportunities for permanent solutions for dedicated courts for both sports, either at the Water Street site or in a future site to be determined.
Just can I confer with the CEO for a second here, because council really hasn't given a mandate for this committee to carry on. Not that we wouldn't form another committee, but how would that work? Because respectfully, you know, you said they said report back short term and long term. So Councilor Van Galen in his motions, or not Councilor Van Galen, I keep doing that, Don, I'm sorry. Mr. Van Galen has suggested this committee would carry on its work, but that's not what we were set up for.
It's a special purpose committee, so technically, under the procedure bylaw, it ends when the recommendation is received and approved by council, but again, it's always within council's purview to extend a mandate if they wish. And if that was to happen, then right now, time is of the essence, we skip some steps of setting up terms of reference and things like that, so if council was in agreement that it makes sense to have the two, the 2 user groups formally at the table for, say, the remainder of the term, we just come back with a better crafted terms of reference, so everybody's really clear on what we're doing. But again, I was.
So you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Bastian?
forgive me, Don, what you're proposing is option 33.
Yep.
So we're leaving it to the council to decide. Is that right?
Well, we're the ones that like it, that's the way it works.
But this committee was set up to make a decision.
No, to make a
No.
recommendation, absolutely not make a decision respectfully, to make a recommendation to council. Council made it respectfully, council hadn't made its mind up, but the committee of council made its mind up, and it was heading down that path of 33 was probably gonna be implemented. So this is not a decision-making committee by any respect, this is an advisory body,
It's an advisory body.
yes.
I guess it appears to me that you have 2 options, 33 or option 1, which includes a cost, more cost, which could be involve fundraising. Or still option 2, if they decide that that's an option that they want to pick. So in essence, you're gonna choose, council is gonna choose one of the 3. Is that correct?
No, council can choose whatever it wants. Council can come back and say, you know what, we agree with the pickleball club, we're gonna change to a dedicated facility. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I'm just telling you that that's the way it works. Decisions made here are not binding by any stretch. We're trying to come to consensus. Mr. Van Galen took time out of his life to come and say to council, hey, let's give this another look. And so council said, let's get the groups together to see if there is a consensus. I'm not sensing a consensus, but anyway, but the reality is let's get this group to talk about some options. There's been a few options given and laid out. This is not a decision-making body, it's an advisory body. One of the councilors, Councilor.
this committee is making a recommendation to council. Council will review the recommendation and vote on it, yay or nay. So there's no
Okay, that's a
decision.
clarification on my part, that's all.
Yeah.
So council had initially, it's still on the books, a recommendation from committee, because we spent a lot of time talking about this, and we had the colors and lines, and I apologize, that's why I'm so confused today, because there've been so many different options. I apologize, I've been confused, and said, at the recommendation of our consultant, and there's a lot of interesting things that we haven't even talked about in the report, and I encourage everyone to read the report, because sometimes a lot of things we don't like what the report says, but it says, in terms of usage and numbers and so forth. So the reality is council has asked if there would be some sort of motion and consensus. I need to check on the wording of your motion, Don, just to make sure it's, you know, you're
With
flexible.
your permission, Jen is always right on top of those things. Did you get all my words?
I believe I have most.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it was a good idea to have the ad hoc committee, and it's great to have you guys sitting at the table together. And what I'm hearing is a long-term solution is needed, but you're both willing to support that financially, coming together and fundraising and making some advancements in that area. So that's a next step. I see it as, you know, before we we as council or as town can maybe look for areas and whatnot, but you and both your parties there need to come together and figure some sort of strategies out for raising money so that we can actually move forward.
Yeah, and I think that we've said quite, maybe not loudly enough in that, but we see that as a long-term thing. And I absolutely love to work with tennis, but we also would be relying on the town's expertise and connections to be a partner at the table so that they would help us with grants and maybe not direct fundraising expertise. And Stephanie, it may not be on the staff that has that, but coordinate the linkages and that. So I see this as a three-party objective as to how to get to that long-term solution, which I think we all is the recommendation support dedicated facilities. We think that's a good idea. Is I don't see it as, okay, you guys work it out and bring us some money. I see that as a three-party solution, because the town has a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge that we'd like to tap into. So however that's formulated in terms of a committee or whatever, that's what we look forward to.
Mr. Lee, Steve?
Yeah, I have a procedural question. Now we have a resolution on the table.
Well, but it hasn't been seconded yet, but yes, go ahead, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I put another one on the table? Or does that have to be dealt with?
We have to deal with Don's first, actually, respectfully, yeah.
It would require a secondary.
Yeah, I didn't second it, but I was just, I'm sorry, I started this and I allowed to go on. It's my bad, because I wanted to get clarification on technicality about the terms of this committee. And the wording should suggest, because we don't have a mandate from council to go on forever with this committee, that's why I was just concerned about respectfully, you know? Yeah, so what?
So I do believe I gathered most of Mr. Van Galen's words. I did omit, there was a detail about, long-term, options at Water Street and other locations. And I did live at the end just to include some procedural details that I moved. So it is there for you.
So just more than the ad hoc committee recommends to council that council proceed with option 33 from the Recreation, Culture and Leisure Master Plan, following consultation with the ad hoc committee regarding the colors and lines utilized on the courts, and the council established an advisory committee to council for the purpose of reviewing alternatives at the Water Street South location for another location for long-term solutions to the current demand for racket sports in St. Mary's, with consideration of appointing the existing members of the ad hoc committee for racket sports. and the 11th. Mr. Van Galen, was
So, a critical word in the second part of that, it would be dedicated, rather than simply permanent. No, these, I'm sorry, the third, that point, long-term dedicated.
Dedicated solutions.
yeah, so the suggestion being is dedicated courts. Okay, that's great. We've discussed that.
That would be the whole point.
So then I'll seek a seconder for this motion. Is there a seconder? Mr. Bath? Discussion. Mr. Lee?
Okay, I'll be voting against this motion, for a couple of reasons. I think it's important that we have dedicated pickleball courts. Our members are looking for it, they want it. And that's one of the things that has come out of this. I think it's, providing this doesn't pass, I will be making a resolution to accept the first suggestion here. Long term, or this is seen as short term, it isn't short term, it's gonna be long term. And I think it's not acceptable to the pickleball community to do this. It is increasing our number of courts. But without dedicated, I know the town's gonna have to come up with some portable nets. Two dedicated courts would be better in my mind.
Further discussion?
Is that a separate resolution?
No, there is no separate resolution, sir. This is, we deal with one at a time. It was outlined before. Councilor Luna?
I'm just wondering if something should be added there that in the meantime, to the long-term solution, staff pursue discussions with UTRCA to keep that ball rolling, because that to me is the first step in the long-term solutions. Until we know what UTRCA is going to say, this is all a moot point, really, for the long term.
Yeah, through the chair, you can add to the resolution if you wish, but that's a given, like we're already,
Okay.
yeah, it's a funny coincidence works, I got a response back from them today, and it essentially was that they can have a phone call because they have more questions than they have answers right now, so we'll continue to work with them, because it's just,
Okay.
at this point. it's
As
just-
long as that's understood, that we're
Yeah,
gonna
so
keep
it's-
that going.
Councilor Luna specifically, it does state in their alternatives at Water Street South, so I believe that's what the CAO is stating is implied, but
Okay.
that is really not.
Thank you. I feel like this could be a long-term solution, but it could be a short-term solution depending on the motivation of the two clubs and their ability to fundraise. And if the town finds the proper location, it's going to be as soon as and as quick as the clubs are able to support a new location. So, and with dedicated courts.
I heard last meeting that there was some future or land over by Gibbon Road, that's probably 20 years down the road. I hadn't heard any suggestions for any spots. I think we're both looking for, separate dedicated courts.
And then,
But 20 years isn't, that's way down the road.
if I may, there is talk right now at this table about expanding into Upper Thames Conservation Authority. So that's a solution that if it comes about, could be a quick and short term and, something that could turn over quickly. There may be other areas that staff will be now with the Rec and Leisure Master Plan identified, looking into finding other areas where this could happen. So let's give, our staff an opportunity as well. And in the background, if we do tomorrow come up with land, that's still a big void. Land is one thing, but the resources to build on it is another.
Stephanie, you want clarification?
I can mention that. So within the plan, it speaks to acquiring parkland within short to medium term timeframe. So that could be within the next 5 years. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's 20 years. As Councillor Prim alluded to, staff are currently in discussions and looking at alternative properties in town and around. So it's not something that as soon as this plan was adopted by council, staff started moving on the recommendations as set out.
Just a question, if this motion is supported by the committee, is the expectation of the committee, is the expectation that that goes to the council and that recommendation based on the past history would move forward very quickly? Is that just an opinion?
Well, it's pretty clear in my mind, if you will, that council wanted to act on this quickly. So, and I don't know that I was clear enough on that, but council set a date for a report back. So the answer is yes, but Stephanie, you deal with the contractors, please, if you don't mind, Mr. Ferguson. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I mean, Doug might be able to speak more to the contractor's timeframe on how quickly they could come in to do lines on the port. I don't know if he had given you a specific timeline, Doug.
Depends on the scope, so if you're looking at a full resurfacing, it's probably mid-season. If you're looking at simply coming to add some lines, that only takes a day of warm weather. It's that if we get into the scope of having to resurface the existing colors to come up with a solution, that's logistically hard to schedule because it's 3 or 4 days worth of work.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's part of the whole thing, we don't have a colors committee council.
Just a question, thank you. Question for Stephanie. 33 says and provide portable pickleball nets. We have to purchase those, correct?
That's within the recommendations that was included in the 20,000.
Right, but how quickly can we get those pickleball?
We can get the nets quickly.
Okay.
The nets are not a difficulty. The
Okay,
nets would be left out, so they would no longer, these nets would be left out for the public to utilize. They probably will be damaged, so when I do suspect that will happen, but they will be left out for the public to utilize. So they will be pushed off to the sides, so just so the clubs are aware, I guess more tennis, they will be within the structure.
Any further questions or discussion necessary? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Van Galen, seconded by Mr. Batch, with regards to the implementation of number 33. Does everyone understand the motion? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. So this will be reported to council on March 11th. As I said, council is a public body and open to further correspondence or suggestions by any means. And there was a request as part of Mr. Van Galen's suggestion that there be further discussions towards a long-term solution, and council, I'm sure, I can't speak for council, but council, I'm sure, will be interested in carrying on the work if everyone here is willing to carry on the work. That's maybe something I'll ask out loud. Is everyone, like, are the people here willing to have further meetings?
Yeah,
Definitely.
yes, you got a timeframe issue, but
Well,
it probably be down the way.
I think pickleball would come into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll continue, and that'll be part of the engagement process. We know a number of things are gonna change too, because it's no secret, the courts need some work down the road, right? Irrespective, the courts are gonna need some work, and, our staff have identified that, so this is not over by a long stretch, there's gonna be further discussions. So we have come up with a short-term and a long-term solution for now. As soon as Mr. Kitmer gets information from Upper Thames, we will, this will go to council procedure, and council will discuss it and make a decision with regard to the recommendation. And then it'll put on the agenda as well about the work of the committee in the future. Hopefully during that time frame, Mr. Kitmer, we get some feedback from Upper Thames.
I would think so, I give, through the mayor. We won't have, council's deadline was by March 1st, meaning we have to report next week, but I don't think Stephanie will have time to turn back around the report for the agenda for next week, so it would be that first meeting in March. That gives us a good 2.5 weeks. I expect to have some, even just preliminary, we'll call them preliminary high-level comments from Robert Hammond. Essentially what we've asked is just help us identify what the key barriers are and then what we need to do to work around those.
Okay. So, yeah.
If we can also discuss the additional points that I had on, just so I get a flavor. I know Dawn had said that indoor courts would not work for tennis.
Yep.
But I want to ensure that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to make sure that that would be okay if we did gymnasium style this is also long term, it's not next year, but if that was something with pickleball, be interested in that.
Mr. Houston.
Absolutely, we would. Pickleball is something that is being played maybe not so much the club, but more but a pickleball community. If they would thoroughly appreciate additional facilities.
One question on that, the facility that you're talking about is basically where the pickleball is played now, right?
Yeah, so the recommendation is to renovate that space into a gymnasium. So it would no longer, the flooring would be removed, flooring would be put down with various sports lines on it. So that would be the long-term vision if that was to happen, which is in the plan as well.
But the ceiling height remains, which is a problem for pickleball too, but.
So it is okay, we didn't, yeah, that's what we're trying to determine, actually, Mr. Batch, yeah.
Just a question, the gymnasium, this is the 2/3. The facility would still be used for other events as well.
Yeah.
It's just
The facility would
renovated.
still be utilized. It would just be renovated to more of a sports court type location. We're finding, within the community, there's more of a sports need for that type of activity opposed to, rentals necessarily for parties and stuff, although we still do have those. So it would be a multi-purpose room, very multi-purpose, more so than it is right now. We wouldn't have to tape lines.
Mhm.
It would be, say, the taping of the lines.
Mr. Rangel?
A point I didn't consider when I made my suggestion is that when it comes to lessons, a facility with 14-foot ceilings, especially for junior tennis players, is probably adequate. So you might want to plan for that possibility.
Okay, so where we go from here actually
And
is,
then there was one more.
oh, the benches, I'm sorry, yeah,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, we skipped over that in the beginning, that's on me, yeah.
Sorry to keep asking this question, benches. So I know I want to just get a feel for what the groups are looking for.
Go ahead, yeah.
I think it makes sense to have a bench per court.
Okay,
So per court means per
Per
pickleball court?
yeah.
Yeah, so that would be
So
two for a tennis court, which is
Yeah, so
very, very nice addition to what we have
So
now.
that means the addition of more benches than there are now.
But I think we talked about that already, anyway, do we not budget for that?
yeah, but there's been a lot of debate about what everybody wants.
How
I
many?
just
Okay.
wanted to be clear because I've heard so many different numbers along the way.
The bigger conversation was benches along with portable pickleball nets off
Is
to
that
the
going to
side,
be-
it's the safety. Like the benches are only a few feet away from the playing surface, if both groups are okay with more benches, we also have to consider that pickleball nets will be in the area as well. That's all.
Councilor Brennan?
Just wondering, how are they stored? Are they just pushed off to the side or are they hung on the fence or like, how does that?
They're pushed off to the side on ground level, the bigger ones.
They're on wheels, so there are casters that go roll around.
Anything further? Any questions? So this will go back to, sorry, Mr. Lisi, yeah.
Just a question regarding the nets, if this goes forward, are you gonna get 8 nets?
Yeah, that's what the recommendation is, so yes, it'll be next.
And you'll be in touch with them what the nets look like and so forth, so they understand about pushing them around and stuff, or you're down,
I've
okay?
got a lot of discussion
Okay,
already.
sorry, fair enough.
Yeah, so I know what I know the next, we'll probably, yeah.
Anything further? So this will go to council March 11th, to clerk, and then we will be in touch. As I say, I can't speak for council, but I think I can say the council's here, there's interest in carrying on. At least I can say that, and because this has been good. I thank everyone for their patience and input. It has been valuable. I apologize if I've been testy at times, but I don't have a solution to this either. I think this is a positive move forward that we have. We don't necessarily all agree, but we have a suggestion to council for the short term and long term, and we'll keep working towards that to make it better for everyone. Okay? Any questions? Councilor Brennan?
Thank you. If we're looking at future of dedicated spaces, what about badminton or basketball or any of those other sports that we don't have surfaces for?
It's all in the report.
Yeah, I know. So we really are eliminating any opportunity
No, we
for
don't.
Bill to
Absolutely.
add other.
It's in the report, council has endorsed. Stephanie?
Yeah, so there's basketball nets already in the report, so we are, I think it was in the north end, I'm trying to recall now. basketball nets in the north end. There is no additional recommendation for badminton at this point. Badminton is played at the high school, however, it could be played in the PRC Community Center long-term as well as another additional gymnasium space. So those sports are being looked at and they would be included in the flooring if that was.
In the gymnasium, but one of my question is, if we were building the dedicated sports, they would no longer be multi-purpose opportunity to add basketball nets at the end of the court that we're building for tennis and for, you see what I'm saying? Like, we're saying dedicated spaces.
It would be no different than right now, we're not going to basketball nets on the existing.
Yeah,
courts.
so we
It
would
the
be
exact same.
expanding, looking at expanding the use of future facilities that are built.
So the racket courts facility, the recommendation would be the long-term exclusive use of both individual and not other sports at those locations specifically.
Okay, all right.
That would be that long-term.
Any further? Okay, so we'll wait to hear from council then to set another meeting, probably the council endorses. How long is it gonna take to, well, we can't guess, I guess, how long to get information?
No, we can't get, then like, again, if, through the chair, if we're setting up a more formal committee, the next meeting probably isn't until, later in April, because we do have to go through this. We have to draft a terms of reference, get that left by council, and then come back to the.
Everyone okay with that? Any questions? And Stephanie will be in touch in the meantime about some other things in terms of the court setup, because time will be ticking.
Yeah.
And we'll try and we will try and.
Yeah, once we
council-
get the
yeah.
report approved by council on March the 11th, then I guess we'll need to sit down and talk about colors.
Okay, so, I guess if there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion that this ad hoc racket sport committee adjourn at 11:40 a.m. Someone want to move that? Councilor Duna, Mr. Lees, all in favor?